My missy be socking it to y'all like Riri. The baddest industry misses of the century. Hit hard like penitentiary bars. Finally admitted.
Hello, I am the Jake Wheel. Welcome back to Bad 90s Music. This is a series where I do a career overview of a major artist of the 90s. This week's clickbait title, Where Have All the Female Rappers Gone? Like, what happened after the decade ended? Did we all just collectively sign this agreement that only one female rapper can be famous at a time? I've talked about this before, how the 90s were just stacked with lady MC talent. Every crew, every label had to have at least one woman on their roster or as part of their posse. Some of them ended up being the most commercially successful as well as most critically praised artists in their genre. And this was just such a regular status quo occurrence that it didn't even register as a big deal at the time. And why should it? We were trying to be inclusive for maybe the first time in history, and this kind of diversity was actually seen as a positive thing. It seemed like progress. Clearly, this was the future, right? No way would the game get stale, the market get oversaturated, or the artists themselves simply lose interest or crash and burn, right? It's funny, but the future always has their plans. Case in point, the Brat. This was a success story that could have only happened in the 90s. Followed by exactly the kind of swift and irreversible fall from grace that seems to plague these 90s rappers almost indiscriminately, regardless of gender or any other demographics. Brat was born Shantae Harris, and she was raised up in the Chicago area. She was involved in music from an early age, played multiple instruments in her school band, and sang in her church's gospel choir. But all that time, she wanted to rap, and she would get her opportunity when, in 1992, she won a rap battle contest sponsored by Yo MTV Raps, where the prize was she got to meet two little kids in backwards pants. That's right, the Brat got her big break through Criss Cross. Thanks to them, she got to meet their producer, Jermaine Dupri. I just like to picture the conversation that led up to their meeting. You have these 13-year-old kids with all their clothes on backwards, and there's this older girl asking them to hook them up with their producer. Meanwhile, these kids are real young, probably not all that experienced in the music industry or in life, and they're just like, sure, Jermaine's right here. I like to think Brat knew what she was doing. At the time, Jermaine himself was a hot young upstart out of Atlanta who had just founded his own label, So So Def, which just recently turned 25, by the way, so happy 25th birthday, So So Def. In an interview with the Big Fat Morning Show, Brat claims that she slipped her tape into Jermaine's car stereo system without telling him who it was. For his part, Jermaine did say to Complex magazine that he wasn't necessarily interested in a female rapper. Then, even after agreeing to produce her debut, he basically told Brat to temper her expectations, saying that female rappers pretty much only go gold, like telling her that there was a glass ceiling to how successful she could be as a female MC. This is the song Functified off of Brat's debut album Functified, released in 1994. And it is actually a rap duet between Brat and Jermaine Dupri.
I passed the mic to the Brat. Yo, I passed it back. Well, sisters and fellas.
There have definitely been collaborations between men and women on rap tracks before, but those typically fell in the realm of slow jams. You know, like the more sensitive side of hip-hop. As if a man and a woman can't rap together unless they're pretending to be dating each other or whatever. But this, and all of the other stuff on Functified for that matter, it's just straight up party rap. Jermaine produced this track and all the others on her first album, and I guess he thought he'd lend a hand on the microphone here.
Let the funk flow in from this homie Jay and his newfound friend.
I'm hitting switches like Eric on the Solo Creek for yo G.
And I don't think it comes across as if he's trying to ride her coattails or steal her thunder. I just think, you know, since he's a little more experienced and a little more established, he's showing that he has her back, to the point where he's willing to make a personal appearance as a show of confidence in his protege. Most importantly, I think they're doing this because they are very clearly replicating a formula that has proven to work.
Funky stuff. It's like this and like that and like this and it's like that and like this and like that and...
So if Brat's flow sounds a little familiar, it's because when she was starting out, she was clearly patterning herself after Snoop Dogg. Even wearing her hair in braids sometimes the same way that he did. And she definitely borrowed a lot of his swagger and technique, a lot of his delivery as a lyricist. Though I wouldn't say that she's a complete knockoff, since she's not as laid back in her vocal approach as someone like Snoop is. She's definitely spitting her rhymes a little bit harder. But if you put the two of them side by side, the similarities become a little difficult to ignore.
It's like that and as a matter of fact, cause I never hesitate to put
It's like that and as a matter of fact, when it comes to the Brat, tat tat tat, I make your neck snap.
like that.
Follow me, but you bet not slip.
Coming up, bet you like Ralph K.
Meanwhile, Jermaine is clearly positioning himself as the Dr. Dre of his own record label.
And the way we're coming at you, baby, we can't miss. There's a new tag team in town. Whoop, that is.
You know, he's producing these G-Funk beats, repping a more talented lyricist while proving himself to be no slouch on the mic either, and sort of just letting her shine the brightest on the track. And if the beat he's sampling sounds a little familiar, well...
You got a gun up in your waist, please don't shoot up the place.
Wow. Yep, that's the same sample of Between the Sheets by the Isley Brothers that Puffy used in the production for Biggie's song Big Papa in the same year. I'm not sure which one of these came out first, but they came out very close to each other. I do remember that. They came out basically in the same summer as each other. But this track still managed to make its own mark, and the track went platinum, along with the album, making the Brat the first solo female rapper to earn platinum certification. Salt-N-Pepa were the first female rap group to achieve that milestone, but the Brat was the first to do it as a solo artist.
Listen to the fattest, listen to the baddest, rhyming apparatus. At a status you ain't got to check.
This is the song For All Y'all, although they pronounce it more like For All Y'all. And it's got another G-Funk style beat you can hear right there with that synth bass, borrowing heavily from groups like Parliament and Cameo, with the Brat just coming in and spitting verse after verse over the top of it. Now I really like these one-note string staccatos in the background of the chorus here.
Who's that making that funky noise? It's the Brat tat busting out on that tag.
There's one criticism I have of the debut album is that it's very short. And this is coming from someone who is normally all in favor of artists keeping their albums as concise and digestible as possible. Just that in this case, I feel like the Brat could have been given a little more room to breathe on some of the tracks. Maybe just had a few more features here or there. Maybe give her a few extra bars or maybe a freestyle track or two to let her really flex her skills. And what's here is great, but there just really isn't all that much of it.
So what you wanna do? Don't even trip. Step up, and I'm gonna bust your lip.
So you can also criticize Brat's lyrics for being a little one-dimensional at this point. They're delivered with skill and confidence, but as far as the subject matter goes, they pretty much just all revolve around either how badass she is or how much she likes smoking weed. In 1996, the Brat released her follow-up album, Another Tantrum, and this is the first single from it called Sitting on Top of the World. This album finds Brat trying to establish a little more of a distinct identity for herself. Behind the scenes, she was lobbying for more creative control. She wanted to sort of move out of the shadow of Jermaine Dupri a little bit. And she ended up making songs that were a little bit tougher and a little more pointed in their lyrical subject matter. And to me, they became much more personal at this point.
No evidence is that I dispense hits and make more housequakes than Prince, leaving everybody dense.
This song right here takes the opening sample from Rick James' song Mary Jane and turns it into this sort of hard-hitting rap rock anthem. So on a more personal note, I had the cassette single of this song back in the day to go along with my CD copy of Functified at the time. The story behind that CD is that I just sort of found it. Somebody had left their CD player sitting around in an ice skating rink, and I opened it up, and there it was. It was like it was waiting there for me. So I've mentioned here before that Boyz II Men's album 2 was the first album that I ever owned on CD, and Functified was the second one. And that's how big Brat was in her day. You could just walk into an ice skating rink and find her CD just sitting around there somewhere.
This love is waiting for you. Don't worry about a thing, just stay there.
So this song is probably the biggest single from her second album. It's called Ghetto Love and features T-Boz from TLC on vocals. I like how even when she's talking about love, it's presented in like this tough street criminal sort of context. Brat kept it gangsta.
Boy for snatching up my happiness, but I regret what happened to the solid foundation if I'm incarcerated too.
The Brat didn't release any other albums in the 90s, but she did do a lot of collaborations and features with other artists and sort of kept herself relevant that way.
Clip into your hip, Brat and Biggie Small.
Oh shit, on top of all that, I'm so remarkable.
This is the song The B-Side featuring Biggie and Jermaine. And it's from the soundtrack to the 1995 film Bad Boys. This is a song that I have brought up on this show before, and it's from the soundtrack to the film Nothing to Lose, and it's called Not Tonight, the Ladies Night remix by Lil' Kim. It's technically a Lil' Kim track, but this is the Ladies Night remix based on the song Ladies Night by Kool and the Gang, and it's featuring Missy Elliott.
Oh, what a night. You should be like Missy instead of being like mine. I like to ride ponies instead of riding bikes.
Angie Martinez, Left Eye, and the Brat.
Bitches bust, we just keep kicking up dust. And you can spread rumors, shit is making me sick of the head too.
was.
The last track I'll play that she featured on during the 90s is a Missy Elliott track called Sock It To Me. And this has probably my favorite verse from any female rapper.
It's gotta get them in switch. House in the shop with a candy crib in Atlanta with a biz. Might have been helping the club, but ain't tried it. Got plenty of my homies that I rock with.
So while Brat was never really able to recapture the success that she had in her debut, unfortunately, a lot of the reason why she wasn't able to remain successful had a little bit to do with her personal behavior. Once the 90s were over, that's when she reaches this weird point in her career where she starts getting arrested for a lot of crimes, and most of them are of the assaults variety. She was arrested for pistol whipping someone. At some point, she had to pay damages in the millions of dollars to an NFL cheerleader a little bit later in her career. She had some of those setbacks, that were the result of her own decisions or her own personal behaviors that sort of cast her in a little bit more of an infamous light. Did you know that she was one of Mariah Carey's best friends? I think she made her feature film debut in Kazam, the Shaquille O'Neal movie where he plays Genie. But she also got to appear in the movie Glitter after she met Mariah Carey, and the two of them started hanging out when she recorded a verse for her remix of Always Be My Baby. And she's acted in a bunch of other stuff. She was on the show Empire recently, and she's done stage performances as well, in performances of the play Set It Off. So she's had an interesting, weird, unexpected career. I just hope that at some point her example can serve as an inspiration to another crop of female rappers, which I think that the world sorely needs today more than ever. So until next time, I am the Jake Wheel. This was Bad 90s Music, and I'll see you sometime in the future.